everyone, and welcome to LISI's News, Views, and To-Dos, where we interview legal marketing professionals about their news, what's going on in their world, their views on the industry, and their to-dos, some advice for our clients. I'm Kristyn Brophy, our Director of Client Strategy here at LISI, where I work primarily with our outsourced legal marketing clients. Today, I am extremely excited to be joined by my successor at Conn Kavanaugh and one of our outsourced marketing clients, Christina Lamb. Christina, thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me, Kristen.
Oh, of course. I would love for you to start by giving us a little bit of background and, tell us about yourself and what's going on at Conn Kavanaugh.
Sure. Okay. I started my career really as an advertising person. I worked on and off at ad agencies, sometimes on the client side and sometimes on the agency side. So, in other words, I one of my clients hired me as director of marketing, and so then instead of being the agency person, I was liaising with the agency person, and that's kind of been my career back and forth. I like both sides. And about 6 years ago, I joined a law firm in Worcester as director of marketing. And then this July, I joined Conn Kavanaugh and added to the role of director of marketing and business development. I'm really enjoying the business development part quite a bit.
So that's interesting that you have this background in advertising and sales. Would you say that there are some synergies with sales and business development and, any kind of relations that you can find there that make business development a little bit easier for you or easier to digest?
Well, I really like the aspect of researching prospective clients and finding out a lot about the individual clients and how we can best serve their needs and how to meet them and talk to them and so on. I actually didn't ever serve as a salesperson, but I worked very closely with sales forces and sometimes planned and put together the sales meetings, which was always great fun. Salespeople are fun people. I really, I really enjoy working with them. They're people, and what we see with attorneys is that some of them are more people than others, but they all have the potential to develop business. Clients want people who are going to do a good job, whom they trust, and who they get along with, so that they don't hesitate to pick up a call. They look forward to a call, and that can be engendered or cultivated in many different ways. It doesn't have to be somebody who's a glad hand or a big outgoing person. Sometimes the quiet people appeal to certain clients just as much.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you say people, because that's something I say all the time that, people want to do business with people. They don't want to do business with this ethereal idea of a firm or a brand. They want to get to know the people. So it's very interesting that you say that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the points I want to make later on in the interview. So it's good that we started out with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started right into your news then. What's going on in your world and what's happening at Conn Kavanaugh that might be newsworthy for our audience?
Well, it just seems like there's always so much going on here. We're very busy. It's a very active firm. We work on very interesting cases, and our attorneys are so smart. It's really fun to talk to them. This summer, we brought on board a partner, Marie Chafe, who's heading up the product liability defense group. And she's so good for this role because she used to be a scientist before she was an attorney. And as we say, it's in her blood because her grandmother, can you imagine this? Her grandmother was admitted to the Ohio State Bar in 1926.
Oh
Talk about
my
a
God.
pioneer. And
That's excellent.
oh yeah, and then this fall we brought on board a senior associate supporting Marie and the rest of that practice group. So that practice group has just really added a lot of strength. Marie has represented a lot of automotive manufacturers and manufacturers of various different products. So she's got lots of very interesting war stories, and it's really fun to talk to her. And when I look around at the female partners that we have here, we have such a strong group. Kirsten Young, who heads up the Family Law Group, was just named Top Women of Law by Mass Lawyers Weekly, and she's going to be elevated to president of the Plymouth County Bar in December. I mean, she's an extraordinary woman. And Erin Higgins, who's going to be managing partner in 2020, starting in 2022. And then we've got Carol Starkey, who heads up the White Collar Criminal and Regulatory Practice Group. And she's a former president of the Boston Bar Association. And she just served on a council to make recommendations about the Massachusetts asset forfeiture law, which needs reform. And the amount of time that these women give to causes for which they don't get paid just blows my mind. I don't know how they do it, honestly, but I respect it tremendously. And then we've got Karen O'Connor, who's one of the senior partners in the tech and outsourcing group, and that's very sophisticated stuff where they're helping to negotiate and document contracts for technology purchases and implementation plans and data protection, really esoteric, very specialized stuff. So I just feel like every day I'm forming new synapses talking to these fascinating people and their interesting work. And it's just wonderful being here.
Yeah, it's almost like walking among people who have been inducted into some sort of legal hall of fame because they do so much and they are so involved with their communities and such. It's really amazing. And I have to ask, how do you juggle all of these different practice areas and these different initiatives that these attorneys are doing as a solo marketer?
Well, I think you know how difficult that can be at times. It's funny. I grew up sewing, and you know they say that the things that you learn when you're very very young help to structure your brain. And one thing about sewing is you learn how to get the steps in the right order. And so I'm always sort of triaging. Okay, what's the deadline here? What things need to fall in place before that deadline? And so it's like I'm moving the puzzle pieces around all the time. And I think that that helps. I'm a real planner, and I try and see the next step. But there's no question when you've got so many very active attorneys, it's and people getting awards and in the community and so on. There's a lot to work with, and it can get a little overwhelming at times, but it's never boring. That's for sure.
Yeah, never boring. That's a great way to put it. It's like drinking from a fire hose or something.
Or trying to if you're trying to take a
Yes.
sip from. Yeah, it is. I agree with you. But that part's really fun. I love talking about the cases. I love understanding how a case can be won or lost on turning on a single word in a contract, which goes to show you how important attention to detail is. I was talking to my daughter about this last night when we were driving home from Vermont, and I was telling her about something that happened years ago in my family where the estate plan had been written so that the estate would be shared equally amongst the issue. Well, it turns out that the people whose estate plan it was didn't end up having any biological children. They were all adopted. And so the will got contested by some cousins because since there were no issue, the cousins felt that they could get part of the estate. And that one word caused so much trouble for the people who I'm quite certain their parents intended for them to inherit everything. And I mean that didn't stop years ago. That sort of thing still holds true today, where a single word can make all the difference. A little frightening, actually, but
Yeah, it's a little scary.
yeah, you want attorneys who really pay attention to the details for sure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's definitely true of the times too, to have like one word that changes everything. One word that we heard all the time at the beginning of the pandemic was we have to pivot our strategy. We have to pivot our business operations. We have to pivot. And if I hear pivot one more time, I don't know what I'm going to do.
One of the words that bothers me like that I don't like using, even though it's conceptually a good word, is the word solutions. It's so overused. and it can be used in any industry. It's not specific to legal, and really what it means fundamentally is a solid dissolved in a liquid, right?
Yeah, seriously.
So
Brings you
that's
back to science a little bit.
yeah, that was a pet peeve word for me. I mean,
Interesting.
everybody wants to be solving problems, so it gets used a lot. I get that, but it's just not one of my favorite words.
Yeah, interesting. Well, now my next question is, what are your views of what's going on in the legal industry? And you see this solutions word everywhere, and that's definitely one view. But I'm curious, do you have any other views of what's happening in the legal industry? And are there some things that may take some more time to change than should?
Yes, well, as you can tell from what I was saying earlier about the senior female partners at this firm in particular has done a wonderful job with bringing in top-notch female legal talent. And this is not a firm that was started by women. It was started by five men, or actually four men, and the fifth one joined when he saw that they made a go of it. And so you've got a firm that was essentially started by five men, and yet we've got so many senior female attorneys here. The number of female partners, I think, is equal to the number of male partners. But the place where the legal profession, not just us, the legal profession is struggling is with diversity. The minority populations are very underrepresented in the legal profession. They're underrepresented in law schools. And one of the things our firm is trying to do is trying to help and mentor um, minority students and encourage them by exposure to the legal profession and bring them in. Several of our attorneys work together with a client to co-sponsor a diversity, equity, and inclusion fellowship here at the firm, where a young law student is actually working here at the firm and exposed to all of the partners and getting the mentorship and support and frankly, a little publicity for being here under this program. And this was co-sponsored with a client, which is really a nice step. And it's something that we're planning to do going forward. But that is really a huge issue for the profession, because the perspective just isn't as broad simply because certain populations aren't well represented. And that's something this profession needs to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see it everywhere in the legal industry that diversity is just not it wasn't a priority for so long. So
Mhm.
diversity and diverse individuals are just not as well represented as white men or even white women sometimes in the legal industry. So
It's
I
true.
I
And there's
love that.
well, and it's difficult right now because people have to go to law school to be lawyers, and if there aren't very many diverse law students, there aren't going to be very many diverse candidates. So I think
Right.
that it's a long-term process, and everybody in the profession needs to play a role in encouraging minority participation in the profession.
Yes, agreed. And I love that Conn Kavanaugh is doing this fellowship program because it seems so unique that not a lot of firms are really doing something like this. I think I've only heard of one other firm doing a diversity specific fellowship or internship. So it's wonderful that Conn Kavanaugh is doing this, and it also helps with that pipeline of finding
Exactly.
diverse candidates and helping diverse candidates maybe get that opportunity during law school that they wouldn't normally get because they come from, a disenfranchised background.
Well, exactly. And one of the things the firm felt strongly about, and this predates me, is that you really can't talk the talk without walking the walk. We there are a lot of firms out there, not just law firms, that talk about diversity but aren't actually doing anything to encourage it. And we felt that we really needed to do something active. And even if it's just one candidate at a time, each candidate moves into the pipeline, and we hope will actually pursue a legal career and change the numbers. So we really encourage our colleagues to join in the march and help the legal profession to properly reflect the population out there.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I love that the firm is, taking that step. And I love that you're supporting it too, marketing and business development individuals in firms play a vital role in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. So I'm glad that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I'm proud of the firm's commitment. The firm has long been committed to bringing women into the profession, and to use your word that you love so much, uh, we're pivoting the effort into the minority communities. And when we can help a young woman who comes from a minority background, even better.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that being said, do you have any advice for our audience? Maybe a legal marketer who is trying to get involved in these DEI initiatives or trying to, you know, work better their career or, get on the right career path, or maybe somebody who's a solo marketer or, what advice do you have for our audience that you can give?
Well, one of the things I feel strongly about in legal marketing is that we have all these wonderful statistics and metrics that we can use in analytics to see which media and which keywords to use. But don't lose sight of the fact that you're ultimately trying to persuade a human being to hire a team of human beings to work together. And the messaging has to have that human element because you want your prospective clients to believe that you will advocate for them, to trust you, to trust your judgment, and again, to like working with you well enough that they will pick up the phone and that they will ramble on in conversation with you because so much comes out of those sort of the friendly conversations. Points get raised that might not in a more formal, structured conversation. So you want to have that rapport. And so you have to ask yourself, do my communications give prospective clients a reason to believe in our attorneys? Do they give our prospective clients a reason to feel that our attorneys will advocate for them passionately and will take up the client's cause as their own? And I think sometimes that is missing from communications for law firms. I see a lot of ads that I call wallpaper that don't actually really say anything. And I know how they happen because every practice group wants to be featured. And once you're featuring more than just a few, it just sounds like a laundry list. So how do you differentiate yourself? It's difficult. It's not an easy thing. But coming from an advertising background, I feel really strongly that the messaging has to stay clear that these are human beings who are going to be hiring human beings. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's something I feel strongly about.
Right. It goes back to the same thing that we were saying at the beginning. People do business with people.
Mhm.
Human beings want to do business with other human beings. They want someone authentic, someone real, someone who has experienced what they have or what their prospective clients have experienced, and someone that they feel comfortable connecting with.
Yeah, that's certainly how I feel.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And thank you so much for sharing that advice for legal marketers, because I think that legal marketers, as you said, get trapped in the data and the statistics and such like that. And sometimes we need to, practice what we preach and get back to our roots of messaging and connecting, as we do with each other, with our attorneys.
And it isn't to say that the analytics aren't worthwhile. They're very worthwhile, and they can really save you a lot of money by focusing who you reach out to. But the messaging still has to have that human component.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much. This has been a lot of wonderful information, and I have so much that I want to digest from this conversation. Do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience before we wrap up?
Well, I have a unique situation here where I followed in the footsteps of Kristen, and the firm had hired Kristyn's new company to help keep the digital marketing going, and I am keeping the relationship because LISI and Christina are just truly brilliant at the digital marketing and the social media. And while we could certainly try and develop the expertise in house, the fact that Kristyn and her team are doing this for so many other law firms helps them bring so much more value and insight and alerting me to opportunities and so on. So I love that I get to work with my predecessor and that we get along, and I'm really happy with the work that the team is doing. So another good piece of advice, if you haven't already engaged LISI, is to give them a shout.
Thank you so much. To our listeners, I promise I did not ask for that
No,
endorsement,
she
but
didn't. No,
that
she
makes me
didn't.
feel very good. Thank you. I promise I didn't ask for that, but I really appreciate that. And yes, we do get along. See, clients can become friends,
Yes,
and predecessors and successors can become friends. So,
yes. Lucky me.
lucky me too. We like having good clients as well as, being able to do our job well. Alrighty. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you in a couple weeks for our next episode. And thank you, Christina, again for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Kristyn.